Hey, everybody. Hope you are all doing well today. Just wanted to welcome you to the Clear Path Leadercast. Today, we are going to be focusing on some three business myths about business plan or three myths about business planning. Our goal is to help train business owners and entrepreneurs who are scaling their business to start building those skills that they need to, instead of being kind of the roll up your sleeves in the details every day owner of a business as you're growing, you really start need to think about bigger picture items. And instead of always looking down into the business, looking out into the future so you can start planning, it's a time where you have to start thinking about hiring and staffing and building some people around you. For those of you who have not been to this before, my name is Craig Anderson. I am the president and founder of ClearPath Coaching and Consulting. I spent over 25 years in corporate America working for Fortune 500 companies, leading national divisions and teams that grew those businesses. And where I was really interested and fascinated, I am not a guy with a business degree. I'm a guy with a master's degree in educational leadership and a business degree or an English degree and a bachelor's degree in English. So I was very keen on learning how to be a business leader. And I was very focused on what made those Fortune 100 companies successful, what allows them to stay as Fortune 100 companies and have that ongoing success. And so much of it is that attention to detail, that focus on people and process and planning so that they're really tight around how they're getting things done. They forecast the future, they plan for the future, they're thinking through options. And that's why they're so successful. And I was really curious to see how can you scale that approach to business to the small business work. And I had an opportunity to spin out a business from a not-for-profit where we were a wholly owned subsidiary and had an opportunity to apply those lessons and find the tools that would allow me to have that focus on planning and process and people at scale. Cause I certainly couldn't afford hundreds of people to do all that work for me like the big companies do. So I've taken those lessons. And after we grew that business from under 500,000 in revenue to 5 million in revenue in just 3 years, where we were named a great place to work here in Indianapolis, where the company was based, I was able to transition out of that opportunity when we sold the business and really for the first time in my life, work with owners of businesses and executives to help them build up their skills to become the leader they always aspired to be. And that's why I started ClearPath Coaching and Consulting. So that's the story of kind of how we got there. Let's dive into today's content where we're talking about the three big myths around business planning. Business planning is not a sexy topic. It's not something that people jump out of bed saying, man, that's what I always wanted to do was build a plan for my business. And there's a lot of misunderstanding of what we really mean when we're talking about a plan for the business. And a lot of bad information around what plans are, and so many companies that build these massive plans that nobody ever looks at again. So we're really going to look at three big issues that I hear when I talk to people about thinking of business plans. I hear from the solopreneurs who don't think they need it because, hey, man, I'm just a solopreneur, or the growing companies that just don't feel like they're big enough where they need a plan, or the ones that are so big that they've built plans that are just completely unwieldy. So I think it's really important to look at these different myths and I've had conversations with people at all levels where they deal with these myths about what it is. And as a matter of fact, today I was just talking to somebody about a $1 billion company that doesn't even really have much of a plan put together. The CEO doesn't really have a plan that's communicated across the organization, both vertically and horizontally through the organization. So everybody's on the same page. And that's a really tough place to be. They're so focused on the politics of external to the organization and dealing with their board that things just aren't getting done. And they're not really seeing the problem. So these things they're a problem if you're a $1 billion company. If you're not paying attention to the details, they're a really big problem if you're a solopreneur too. So let's talk about these different levels of what you need. So solopreneurs will tell me, well, I don't need a plan. It's just me, man. I'm just doing my thing. And you don't need a big plan when you're a solopreneur, but you need a plan. You need to be thinking about what are the things that I'm going to do? What is, we really, no matter which of these levels we're looking at, it's important for you to have a plan that focuses on 5 areas. You really want to have a vision of what it is that you're building, what your company is going to look like in 3 years. Even if you're a solopreneur, you want to have a vision of where you're going, that North Star that drives your business forward. You want to have a mission. There was a reason you started the business. Part of it may have been you wanted freedom. Part of it may have been you wanted to always work for yourself. But another part of that equation is that, what I did this to solve a problem. I saw an opportunity. I saw a problem that needed to be fixed, and I was ready to step in and step up and fix that problem. And that's really your mission. That is that the thing that really guides you and gets you out of bed every morning because I'm solving this problem. I'm serving, I'm filling this need that I saw, and I'm making money doing it. So that is the essence of a mission statement. We look at objectives. What are those things that we're measuring that tell us we're going to be successful? We are also looking at our strategies of how we want to execute the business, how we treat our customers, how we find our customers, what kind of customers we focus on. How do we sell? What's the value creation that we're creating for our potential clients? So we think about the how of the business, how we want to run the business. What kind of profits are we looking for in the business? Do we want to be a high price provider with a few clients? Do we want to be a low cost provider with lots of clients? These are all important things to look at from even for a solopreneur. And the last piece is the action plans for our business. When we set out our objectives of the way the numbers we're trying to achieve in our business and the strategies of how we're trying to run our business, the action plans are how we fill in the gaps once we identify those things. So those are the five key concepts to any business plan. And they're really important even for the solopreneur, because the solopreneur needs to be thinking about the future. They're in the interesting case where they've got their sleeves rolled up in the day to day, and they need to be spending time thinking about the future. Because if they're not thinking about, the work I'm doing today is the clients I'm going to have in 90 days, if they're not focused on that, they're not getting the job done. So, and they may find themselves just out of work and going back, looking. That's my big worry all the time is, am I looking to go back to corporate America? And once you've been out, it's really hard to want to go back in. So I really encourage solopreneurs to put that plan together, to start building levels of accountability. It's so important to be accountable as a solopreneur, because you may think, well, I'm accountable to myself and I don't eat if I don't work. Well, but what are the things you're doing that are going to generate with the work? What are the daily and weekly and monthly activities you're doing to make sure that you're doing the things to generate interest in your business, to treat your customers the right way, to plan your finances so that you've got a cushion for a rainy day, and that you're setting aside taxes, for when you have taxes to pay down the road. These are all important things that we want to build into your plan as a solopreneur. Now, we may not create a whole bunch of scorecards and progress reports on the outside of it, but we want to have that one document that you come back to every month to level set yourself, to say, hey, this is what I said I was going to do. Am I doing it? And if you need accountability for that, there's opportunities to hire a coach to do that, like me. There's opportunities to jump into group programs. All those things are ways that you can start building that accountability, finding another solopreneur who you're accountable to and show them the plan. And it's very inexpensive for you to build that plan. And, certainly we would love to talk to you about it if that would be helpful to you. So that's why solopreneurs need a plan. They need accountability. They need something that keeps them focused and grounded on how they're running the business. And it also is, really important to think about, I have a plan so that when different things happen, curveballs happen like COVID, or suddenly we come out of COVID and things start growing really fast, we need to be able to look to say, this is what I thought I was going to do. Now there's this new scenario that's going to move me up or down. How am I going to change to adjust to compensate for that? And how far off am I from where I thought I would be? Because that all gets into your planning and your ordering and different things like that. So crucial skills for you to be thinking about. Then I'm going to pause just a minute to see if there's any questions. Okay, great. So that's the solopreneur, why the solopreneur would want a plan. The next myth is, well, I'm not big enough to need a plan for my business. What do I need to plan for? I had a company I was working with over the summer that was in a pretty unique niche. And it was a really great place to be during COVID, when people were spending money on their homes and their properties and things around them since they couldn't go out of town. And I said to him, well, how do you plan for, what your revenue is going to be? And he goes, I don't know. We just, we do some deals, we make some money, and, hopefully we have some money left over, which is great until that deal flow starts cutting off. And if you're not setting aside money for a rainy day when things are going really well, like they were for this business, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So that particular company is probably living a great life right now, but where are they going to be in the future? And, they don't really have a plan. They just kind of execute on things. They have some plans for things they want to do, but they're not thinking out 5 years or even 3 years for the business. They're really just saying, what can I do to make money today? And so the planning process, that 5-step planning process we talked about, a big part of that is starting to see into the future and to think about what's going to happen in the future. Now, maybe I know things are going really well, but when am I planning for reserves to set aside in case, things start to not go as well, or just in a return to normal? If things are going to return to more of a normal growth pattern, am I investing in so many things right now that I can't afford to keep in that normal growth pattern? So we need to be thinking long term. We need to be prepared to adjust our numbers. And it also starts to clarify the work and sets priorities, because even these small businesses that maybe it's the owner and a bunch of helpers around them, they need to have clarity around how the business is going to be run, so that these helpers around them, they're not constantly in the state of all telling them what to do every day, because they're going to get to that tipping point where it's like, well, now I've got so many of these helpers around that I'm having to tell what to do every day. I can't do it fast enough. And suddenly now I find myself in the way, and I'm actually not making the money I could because everyone's standing around waiting for me to get to them to tell them what it is they need to do. So having a plan that you communicate to your whole team so they understand what the priorities are, what the objectives are, how we're running the business, and what the priorities are on projects we're working on, so they can start making decisions that you don't have to be involved with every day. You're always going to want to have accountability. You're always going to want to check in with them on what they're doing, but you don't want to be in a position where everybody's checking with you every day to figure out how they need to do their job. We really want to get that team aligned. And the more we can share with them of how we want the business to be run, the better that they'll be able to align with us. And the other thing to think about is, when we get to the point where we're starting to hire maybe some leaders to help us manage that business, or even hiring people on the team, having that 5-step plan on one page is something we can share with them to say, this is the kind of company we are. Dude, does this look like the kind of company you want to work for? And that's an important piece as well. And this really refines your vision. When you get down to the vision of the business of where we're going to be in 3 years and how we're running the business, that helps people understand, oh, this is the kind of business I've always wanted to work for. That's not the kind of business I want to work for. I don't want to work the kind of hours that it's going to take to do this job. So really crucial for you to focus in on these things and have a plan that also prepares you for those rainy days, right? That puts you out for 3 years so you're ready to go and you're ready to adjust as you're looking forward. So the whole myth of we're not big enough to need a plan, not true. Everybody needs a plan. Now there you may have a plan that you put together, and you may have a series of scorecards and progress reports that you're checking in, even with yourself every month. Just some more detail behind the scenes of, all right, if I'm going to hit that number, what does it look like? First, maybe I work back from my annual number to quarters and then to months. And I look back to say, well, this is the assumption I made of why I would hit that number. Did those assumptions come true? On your projects, I want to be checking in every month to see, am I hitting the major milestones that I need to achieve the closure on that project on time? Those are the reasons. So we may want to have a deeper plan behind the plan where we're really doing that monthly monitoring and really doing that check-in process. And then there's the other one that I see in, slightly bigger companies all the way up to, very large companies that use this 5-step plan or they don't use it. And they have these huge planning processes where people are just digging in and spending all their time putting together a plan where they're not actually getting work done that's adding value to the business because they're working all this time on a plan. And so they work really hard to build something, and then it becomes such a big unwieldy plan that it's hard to use it as a reference point when things are going on. So you're just like, we'll just toss it up on the shelf and we're never going to look at it again. But if somebody ever asks, yeah, we got a business plan. It's right up here on the shelf. The other thing is I see businesses that, the top, and I will be very clear on this, that the business decisions of where the vision is for the business reside with the owner of the business, and you set the vision, you set the direction, you set the objectives. But you also want to make sure you're checking in the organization for a reality check on some of these things and make sure you're not making incorrect assumptions. Because if you're not in the day to day, or you're less in the day to day, you may not really have a good understanding of what it's going to take to do certain things. So you want to lay all this out and then do a check-in point with everybody in the organization or the key people in the organization. Because one of the things we want to do with our plan as our business grows is we may have the business owner's plan, but then if they start building a team of leaders around them, we're going to create another layer of plans underneath them on one page with that 5-step process. And we're going to want to make sure that those plans are aligned vertically with the owner's plan and then horizontally with each other. So we don't have a lot of infighting for resources. We want to have a meeting around the table where everybody presents these. So we make sure that everyone on the business is aligned with where the owner wants to go, and they're aligned with their colleagues to make sure they're not pulling on different resources or creating time pressures on one that's going to stop them from hitting their goals on getting projects done. it is amazing to me. I tell this story quite a bit of company I was around the table and, the different business development and sales were all excited about all these initiatives they had going on, but everything rested on the person who had to create all the content, the learning content. And then when it got around to her turn, she looked at everybody and said, well, I assume I need to include in my plan that I'm going to hire 10 people because you all have just created work for 10 people. And knowing that she wasn't going to be able to hire those 10 people made it clear that no one had really meshed their plans horizontally until we had that time, and we had to start making adjustments to what was reality and some of the numbers. So it's really important that we have these discussions. I was at one time when I was working for one of these Fortune 100 companies where they had a big retreat on this big plan that the senior guys, the senior folks had put together to really go from, you know, 18 million in revenue to 30 million in revenue in 15 months or something. I was thinking it was 15 to 30 in 18 months. And so they had this big plan. They brought everybody in for this big meeting to kick it all off. There were shirts, there was all kinds of great stuff. And the very first person to get up was over a division that had really been the moneymaker for the last 3 years. And they just stood up and said, hey, we've had a really great run, but I just need to tell you all that, our forecast is showing that's going to start to tail off a bit. So we're really not going to be able to contribute to this 15 to 30 million number. And that just cast a pall over the whole audience, but no one had really checked with them to see, can we expect this to still grow in this trajectory? And it's amazing that this can happen in big companies, but it did. And that big company is no longer with us today as a result of that kind of thinking. So it's really important that you make sure you do a reality check on this before you do the big rollout of the big plan for everybody. Now, the other side of it is, there was a company that I was with where the CEO really thought they had a plan. They were convinced they had a plan and a strategy, and but it was pretty loose and it was pretty high level. And what was happening was underneath them, there was a lot of confusion about what was important and what wasn't important. And people competing for resources and saying, well, I'm doing this, well, I'm doing that. And there was just all this kind of dissension and frankly, stress trying to figure out where to push and pull. And it wasn't a real pleasant place to work. And a lot of people were getting frustrated. And there was COO that was brought on and everybody kind of brought their baggage to them and said, and so there was a big meeting, two all full day meetings to really build a plan. And after the first day, lots of great stuff on the charts where we really started getting focused in on the things that we were going to do and the things that we weren't going to do. And we went through all that, wrapped up day one, got into day two, really did some more of that great work. And then after lunch, kind of the wrap up period came, and the COO triumphantly says, all right, based on all this, here's what our focuses are. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're not going to do. Here's our priorities. Here's our objectives that we're trying to achieve. We have started to have this really clear vision of where we wanted to be in 3 years for the business. And then that same CEO sat down and said, well, this is great, but I don't want to rule out any possibilities that might come along. So I want to leave this pretty open. And you could just see the energy in the room dissipate. You could just see the people just kind of slump because we finally had clarity and then it was ripped away from us. So this clarity is something that clarity of goals builds alignment. When you have horizontal and vertical integration between your owner and the teams, it's really an energizing force. And it doesn't have to be a big, complicated process to do. This is something you can put together these plans in, 4, 5 to 6 hours per person of invested time to do it. And you can start getting that clarity around goals. You can start getting it where everybody's rowing the boat in the same direction. And that's really the energy that you want to have. Look, you don't want to like leap out of bed and run into the office every day, but you don't want to be dejected. You want to be part of a team that's all rowing in that same direction and not veering all over the place. And business owners, that's your obligation, is to create that environment for your teams. So what we do is we work with you to put this plan on one page. We also, as your growing business owner, we're really going to teach you all the things that you really need to do to really start growing into the role of a CEO. And it all starts, the first place we start with is really getting to know yourself better. But then it also starts with putting this plan together for your business, putting it together on one page. So the plan is easy for you to communicate. That's what you want. You want something that you can communicate effectively and easily to your entire team. So that builds that energy and that gets everybody wrapped around and focused on that common goal. And that's what I saw in those Fortune 100 companies that were really successful. That one I talked about with the bad situation, they got bought by a company that had it together. And that's where you really started to see that focus and growth change. So all these myths that a solopreneur doesn't need a plan. My business isn't big enough to need a plan, or I've seen these big plans and they don't work. Those are all myths because there's ways to make it work and get you focused on your business. We may implement it a little differently depending on where you're at in your growth, but there's a way to build a plan for your business that's effective, that's not going to take all your time to build, and it's going to help you get clarity in what you're going to do to go forward and keep you accountable so that you are more likely to be successful. Really enjoyed speaking to you guys today about these busting these myths about business plans. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. Look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care. Bye bye.